What's up, guys? This is your host, Danny Baylor, Danny Cakes, and you are listening to the Immeasurably More podcast. Hi, you guys. Welcome back. This is Danny. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And before I get into today's topic, I, of course, want to remind you to go ahead and check out my last episode. It is probably my favorite podcast to this day. It's all about seeking approval in the world, how we get caught up in it. I use the word how I feel like we're like a slave to it. And it's something that we don't even realize that we seek. And especially with social media and everything. But really, and then how to accept God's love where you're at, that you don't have to earn his love and acceptance. And it's just something that's super near and dear to my heart. I always struggle with, and I really wanted to just shed some light on it. So I'm super excited for you guys to learn about that. And I hope that it just fills your heart so much and gives you a whole new perspective on not needing to seek approval from everybody else and that you are already so loved by your Heavenly Father. So today, I really want to jump into a topic. My favorite passion is fitness, health, and wellness. You guys, this is so much of what I've done in my career fields. I've had such a huge passion for this, and I'm so excited to just share with you guys really what goes on in my head when I just face it, how I deal with it, what my perspective is on it, why I'm such a huge advocate for it. And so really, as we choose healthy lifestyles and pursue fitness, while there are so many just obvious benefits to that, right? And especially from an athlete's perspective, I'm like, okay, God, you gave me this body. I want to see what it can do. I know there's such a fine line where we can really even just slightly abuse those things that are healthy choices in our life, right? And so I know this first and foremost because I am guilty of this. And I wanted to say that going into this, you guys, all the things that I share with you are things that, like I said in last episode, I struggle with. And I really want to just expose to you and be like, hey, this is normal. This is something that I think of. This is what I feel about. And I really want us to just normalize being aware of it. And so I just really believe, if we keep our eyes fixed on the Lord and fixed on Jesus, even in our passions for health and wellness, I believe that we can find ways to still glorify God. So today I want to go over a couple things why I choose to prioritize my health and fitness, even outside of it being a passion for me. Really, you guys, God's intention for how we treat our body and still those ways to glorify him through it, through those healthy habits, the effect of health and fitness, the role it plays on our mental health, mind specifically, and really the fine line, like I said, between obsession and honoring your body. And so, to be honest, you guys, I'm a little nervous going into this. And I just, my heart for you is I just want to be so cautious with what I say because this is such a sensitive topic to me. And so before even going into it, I just want to preface that by saying I'm very aware of that. And I am just truly speaking from my heart today, what I feel like God's put on my heart over the last few years about it, how he's brought me to the light about it. And, I've had my fair share of multiple struggles, which of course I'm going to dive into and share with you guys. And I just want you to know that I love you where you are. And I'm not coming ever from a place of judgment. And I just hope really that God just speaks to you through me and brings you wisdom through this episode as he leads you through your personal health journey. So I just kind of want to go into a little bit of background on my passion for health and fitness, really where it all began. And so at 19 years old, I took my very first CrossFit, you guys, my CrossFit class, and I fell in love with it. I knew day one, I was like, I will do this for the rest of my life. I'm going to be a coach one day. I just felt like there was something so powerful within me that I never even knew existed until I tried something like that. And I just knew I was like, this is so powerful. And I want to give this back. I need to help other people, realize that there's something bigger within them. And so it's always been my heart, literally in every area of my life. I just love coaching people and love just bringing out their potential. But so I've been in CrossFit for nearly 10 years now. I coached for a few years, but you'll currently find me as a cheerleader at Chalk Performance Training here in Newport Beach. I love it so much. But yeah, my heart is totally about just empowering people through fitness, teaching them how to fuel their body right with, making healthy choices. And I'm saying this is such a huge deal to me because I have seen the effects personally when I don't prioritize it and when it's not part of my daily routine. And there was honestly just a time when I just wasn't even educated on what to eat. And so I absolutely love CrossFit. Like, I just feel like this is the sport that was made for me. I've never felt like I just belonged in some area. It just fills me up, all the endorphins, all the things. Like, I'm like, this is like my game, right? And so I just knew that I wanted to be my very best at it. And I knew I needed to fuel myself also properly to be, perform as well as I could. I wanted to achieve that. I wanted to be like, hey God, if like this is what you've given me, this is the passion that you've given me, and this is what like I could be good at. Like, I want to be my very best, but I need to like be aware of all the things that play a part into being my best, right? And so alongside that, like wanting to fuel myself properly, you guys, I have struggled so poorly in the past with digestive issues and really just like a lack of energy despite that level of activity. And so I was seeking for years and years and years what was like the right regimen for me that would make me feel good. I could fuel myself well. I would still love what I was eating, not feel like I'm totally restricted in all these things. But then I really also, like I said, lacked that energy. And I remember I used to have for like years in a row, I would get like blood tests taken because I thought I was just like anemic or something. I was so low in energy. I'm like, hey, I'm in like my mid-20s. Like, I'm pretty active. I eat pretty good. And there's something just still really missing. And I think I had just this imbalance that of just nutrients. Like, I just didn't know like what my body needed, and more than anything, I just really felt like God was like, hey, you are in control based on the foods that you eat, like how you digest your food. And really, I wanted to kind of like a holistic angle at it, And so all to say, I'm very cautious of what I put in my body. And I've learned over the years, I've tried so many different things, you guys, about what makes me feel good and, what plays a part with my mental health, what makes me recover well, all those things. And especially, like I said, digestion. So it was just about finding that right nutrition plan that fit my time, my budget. I mean, I'm invested a lot of like my knowledge and thought process into just like what makes me feel good by what I eat, right? And so now I have a very healthy nutrition plan that I love so much. And I always like to say that I get to look good, feel good, and still eat good on with what I do. And so I currently work with a health and wellness company, and I have finally discovered how to have a healthy relationship with food while not feeling like I'm totally restricting myself, like I said. And this is an area where I coach people through a 30-day program. And so if you are looking for a kickstart toward healthy habits and a sustainable lifestyle, you guys can slide in my DMs. And I love nothing more than just, like I said, helping people reach their goals while pursuing healthy living from the inside out. And so I was so desperate for answers after years and years trying to understand just like the basic need of eating as a human being. And so I would love nothing more than to simplify that for you. So I figured all this out, right? I knew how to fuel my body. I knew this was a priority. This is a passion for me. This is where I felt like I belonged. And it was super special to me because, as we know, and I just talked about in the last episode, I felt rejected and out of place and not accepted in so many areas of my life. And so I felt like this was like, I am like currently, you guys, like looking for just a competition to do. I'm like, this is such a big part of who I am, and I think that's even like a sense that we can like self-identify with how we look or how we perform or maybe being an athlete or something, And I really want to just like focus on how do we do this? How do we make those healthy habits like healthy spiritually, right? Because there's such a fine line. And so first and foremost, what I want to share about this is, so not only was it important for me to really feel good and understand that, perform well and allow my digestive system to work properly so I felt like a normal human being. But I learned that I feel like God has revealed to me over the years how important it is that this is my body that he's given me and we need to honor him with it. And 1 Corinthians 3:16 says, "Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's spirit dwells in you?" And so I just really felt like God said, like, you embody like my spirit. Like, and I think about that in the aspect, like, and what I'm doing, am I always reflecting Christ? Like, am I always reflecting like who God is and his spirit? And so I'm kind of going to break that down for you guys, and really honoring my body through health and wellness, definitely affects that. So number one, like God gave me this body and I will care for it. And so when I'm maybe tempted to make like poor decisions or I'm not prioritizing my health, I'm like, hey God, like you kind of keep me in line, like you keep me accountable because like you gave me this body and I want to make sure that like I take care of it. And something huge too is I realize when I'm taking care of myself, you guys, that makes us a better servant. When we're sleeping well, when we're eating well, like we know what we are, what we eat, right? Like that has an effect on the way that we feel. When we don't eat so well, we're groggy, we're tired, the hanger, right? Like that's such a struggle for me sometimes. Like I'm like, okay, Danielle, you're not being like impatient, you just need some food. Like your blood sugar is just dropping. Like you need to take care of yourself, And so we need to rest well. We need to eat well. Like that plays a huge part on our mental health. Like I'll get into. And so it's like, if I'm not taking care of me, like those basic things, right? It's kind of like filling our cup. Like you need to fill your cup spiritually before you pour on other people. That's huge for me, right? But we also need to take care of ourselves physically. And if my physical being is being cared for, then am I serving others to my very best? Like, is my mental game like on check? Like, am I sleeping well? Do I want to wake up early? Do I want to dive into personal development? Like this is such a huge deal that we need to take care of ourselves to be able to serve others in the field that God's calling us to serve them in, and God didn't do this on accident. Like he knows like, hey, I designed your body a very specific way for you to function and feel good and rest well and be energized and all those things. And like that starts with what you put in your mouth, like and how you sleep. And are you taking the time to, exercise? Like there's purpose behind all those things. And God, like I said, God really created our bodies with intention about how they function. And he gives us the free will to decide how we take care of them. Like I said, really looking at it and saying like, hey, if I'm taking care of myself and as those things affect the way that I act, like, am I reflecting like the Spirit of God, And I know when I'm hungry or I'm not sleeping well or I'm not prioritizing this, like I don't feel like myself. And I want to feel like myself because being me myself means that like I know that I'm connected with the Holy Spirit. Like that when I feel like things are off in my life or I'm like not prioritizing or something, like, hey, there's like this imbalance. Why do I feel this way? And a lot of the times, you guys, I've realized I've learned these patterns enough over the last 10 years when prioritizing fitness and wellness is like, it has to do with what I eat and what I put in my body. And those little things that you do over time definitely make a difference. And so really having a solid routine, I just know like when I don't eat clean or eat good, it makes a big difference. And so if I'm doing that and maybe I'm struggling, I think it's so simple. Like I've learned these little prayers, be like, hey, God, like give me the desire to do like what's right because it honors you. Like when you're tempted, I think it's so important if this is something that God has designed our body to be a certain way, to reflect him, to be in the right mind spiritually, like he's going to help you out, So something that was really huge for me this last year that I never knew that I was something I ever struggled with, but was the fact that, you guys, I became like an emotional eater. And I think that there's a lot of time I experienced loneliness or just my life looked different, just mentally, like there's just different circumstances in my life that weren't the same. And so I just found myself like, and I never did that before. It wasn't something I ever really like struggled with or was like aware of, but I started to reach for foods or maybe even just like overeat. And then that in turn, like didn't make me feel good about myself and didn't, or affected my mental health because I was choosing poor foods, and then because I made those bad decisions, I'm like not happy with how I feel and how I look. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, God, like how do I overcome this? Like I had never felt that before. Like I said, I've been into health and wellness for 10 years and I feel like I've had a lot of control and understanding. And it was like this gradual change that I started to do this. And so finally, because I felt like it had such a hold on me, I realized God was like, hey, you're reaching for that food as a relief when I'm your relief. And again, like using prayer, I know that there's people who, and even I'm guilty of this sometimes too. Like I have friends who are like, hey, like I have to go on a run or like I have to work out because that's going to like relieve this anxiety or something in me. And I'm like, I'm guilty of that because like I try to choose certain foods to like relieve it. I'm like, hey God, like I'm not kidding you guys. I wrote all like these Post-its on my refrigerator and I said like, God, like food is not my relief, you are. And that's what it took for me. Like I needed to be reminded of that every single day. And even if, like I said, even if I was making good choices, like I was still overeating. And I realized like that affected the digestive issues that I have. And that's my own personal deal. But that's what I've learned. I'm like, okay, all in all, I think that we can like run to worldly things, even if they're good things. That's my whole point of this podcast. Even if it's a good thing, working out is good, eating healthy is good. But if there's a line where that becomes before God, like that's not good, And so I needed to be reminded like, hey, God, like you always have to come first. And ultimately, like if I don't have access to chocolate, if I don't have time to work out or something, I'm just going to be like just drowning in anxiety or drowning in loneliness. Like God didn't create us that way. He's like, hey, in a moment, like I can relieve you. And you just have to have confidence that I can do that for you, And I'm not saying it's immediate. I'm not saying it's like going to happen overnight, but it's those habits. And I'm saying with any kind of temptation, any kind of lie that we face, you guys, that when we're, talking, we're dealing with something, we're like, okay, God, like you're able to do this. And I'm going to keep trusting and creating the habit that when I'm this lie slips in, like, boom, I'm going to be like, God, you're my relief. Like, this is what you say about me, all those things, right? So all of this, I'm trying to train you and me is being reminded that it's just this constant everyday conversation with God and being reminded of what he says about us and how we can speak to him and, be relieved through him. So I hope that makes sense. One of my favorite verses, you guys, is 2 Timothy 1:7. I'm pretty sure I've talked about it on the podcast before. But it says, "For God gave us a spirit, not of fear, but of power and love and self-control." Like I said, like God gives us self-control. And so be reminded of that. Like when you're reaching for those foods or you're feeling like you need to relieve anxiety or something and it's taking a toll like on your mental health, like be reminded, like, God, you give me a spirit, like announce that, like say that out loud. This is like a prayer. This is an affirmation we talk about, right? Like, God, you give me a spirit of self-control and of power, like your power at work within me. So don't feel like you have to be so like the food or working out or all that has to have like a control over you, because we have a spirit of self-control. That's how God has designed us. So like I said, kind of leading into my mental health, like I said, was like a little transition into it. But yeah, I mean, I was a totally an emotional eater. And as far as like even like overeating, all those things. And it was interesting too, because this last week I was talking to the boyfriend and I was like, hey, I just feel like there's something in my mind that I can't like overcome. Like there's like this blockage and I can't get past it. And he was like, hey, well, I remember you saying like when you really ate very, very clean, you were like, you felt so clear-minded. And I was like, bless you. I'm so obvious to me, but I remember feeling that, but like, it was just so great for somebody from the outside perspective to realize that. And I know. And that's, like I said, what really keeps me accountable is I'm like, hey, God, like I know when I reach for this food, dude, you guys, like especially sugar is a huge one for me. I'm so aware of the effects that like of my eating patterns, like I said. And now when I'm like tempted to maybe like, if I'm like tempted to eat like a piece of gluten, I'm like, I know I'm going to be like so bloated and uncomfortable. And that the way that I look at sugar sometimes, if I eat like an excessive amount, or if I even think about like just having a little bit sometimes, I'm like, okay, like, is this worth it, Danielle? Because you know the effects of this. And for me, like sugar just makes me depressed. And that's something I've just learned and I have to be aware. And I think like everything in moderation is fine. Like I said, this is a very like broad, sensitive topic. And I'm just sharing with you guys like my personal, like this is what I've learned. And I hope maybe in some way you can relate to it and God speaks to you. But for me, I know there's certain foods that trigger things for me and trigger emotions for me. And I'm just like, it's not worth it. And if I'm going to be depressed, like I can't be like serving other people, like I can't be like on my A game spiritually. I can't be like the best version of me, And so, yeah, I just feel like I know as far as my mental health, if I'm choosing to like be relieved by other foods or overeating or sweet foods or something, I'm like, okay, I'm reaching for that when like I literally have access to God 24/7, no matter where I'm at. And he can fill me up in ways that food never will. And even when I don't have access to those foods, And so I just know, as far as myself, I'm so clear-minded. I feel like so spiritually strong when I just take care of myself, when I honor my body, when I'm reminded like, hey, I have control over like what I eat, and that I decide that food doesn't have, a hold on me. And just a simple prayer like, hey, God, like remind me that I have that spirit of self-control. Also, finishing up this topic or this section about mental health and emotional eating, all those things, honoring God with your body. 1 Corinthians says in 10:13, no temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with temptation, he will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it. I remember thinking like there's times that I'm like, dude, how do I just get back on track? Like I've just created this new habit of just reaching for these foods or feeling relief from them. And like, how do I even do this? And yeah, there are amazing programs and things like that we can make choices to do and keep ourselves accountable and be disciplined on all those things. But in the Bible, like God's saying like, hey, like I'm not going to tempt you beyond your ability. Like you have the ability to gain control. And like, that's my perspective with this topic going into that is, and I'm excited because I'm going to share with you guys at the very end, like some different prayer points that you can just focus on when you're struggling and going through these things. But just remember, like God doesn't tempt you beyond what your control is. So you have the control. You have a spirit of self-control. Be reminded that, this is our body. God gives us this one body and we really honor him with it. And I'm telling you, when there's nothing, like there's things that like I just don't want to do. Maybe it's like make my bed or clean or work or whatever, I'm just like, oh, I just don't feel like it. I'm reminded, I'm like, hey, God, I'm going to do this because it honors you, because you gave me this opportunity, because you gave me this body, because you gave me a passion for fitness, and I'm going to show up for you. So that's what keeps me accountable. I hope that was helpful to you guys. But the greatest thing I think that I struggle with health and fitness, and really that fine line, was an obsession. And so while all of these are great habits and priorities, I know that the devil can still use those good things as idols for us. And an idol meaning something that comes before God. And he does. The enemy he loves to disguise those good things in our life, but that they slowly become like too much of a priority, that it becomes your first priority. And Matthew 2:37-38 says, you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. And this is the first and great commandment. This is the first thing that God calls us to do, is to love him and to choose him first, not because he's like, look to me. I mean, yes, God is so worthy of our praise and glory. But you guys, I've just learned, like when God is not first, life is out of balance. Like life is out of whack. Like when I experience anxiety and depression, all these things, I'm just like, it's God. I know it's because you're not first. I'm focusing on silly things that have no eternal value. Right? So focusing on God, not allowing, even the good, healthy habits to become an idol and come before God. And if you have yet to listen to episode 9, you guys, it's called My First Jesus Encounter. I highly recommend to listen. I really go into depth about how this was such a heavy obsession for me and how the Lord really just like relieved me from it. I mean, basically for years and years, I just obsessed over it and I didn't even know it. That was the scariest part, as I was just like, girls are like this. We're hard on ourselves. We hate our own bodies. We don't like our hair. You know what I'm saying? I always like picked myself apart and I just told myself this is normal. And it was so not normal. Like it was very excessive. And I was like, if I could just eat this, if I could just afford this gym membership, then I'll be lovable. Then I'll be accepted. And like you guys, I can't even remember. I remember like years ago when this happened, and I'm like, this is so embarrassing. Like I'm so sad to even admit that was something that I struggled with. And I knew that God would give me an opportunity, like a platform to be able to share that story, because I was like, dude, like this, it's hard to talk about. But at the same time, how many other girls feel this way, And I had like a personal relationship with the Lord, and I still, prioritized this too much. And I just obsessed over what I ate, being able to work out in order to look a certain way. And the lie, like that I said, was that if I did that, it would make me loved and accepted. And that's so far from the truth, And I even mentioned this in the last episode too. Like there are times that the enemy's still going to try to tempt you. Like these lies like slip in frequently. And I literally, there's seasons where I feel really strong. And there's seasons where I'm like, dang, you need to be on your guard, because like this is coming up, or this is playing a part, or social media or whatever, or people expect you, or I teach people how to prioritize health and fitness. And so it's like, okay, I need to obviously, not look a certain way, but like I need people to see me and be like, wow, I can trust her. Like she obviously takes care of herself, but there's that fine line. And so the things that are good that we can prioritize can become too much a priority. And so over the years, I've just really just trying to be in tune with, God's voice and the enemy's voice, and having that middle ground, and making sure like, God, all the things, like, if you want to just ask yourself, like, does this glorify you? Like that's a great like reassurance question to ask yourself. Like, if I'm doing this, like, is this glorifying you? Maybe I'm taking too much excessive time. Maybe I'm prioritizing the gym on a Sunday. Like that's a huge thing for me. And I know everyone has like, the way that they do their, deal or whatever. And certain days, I try to have a couple days a week that I consistently have a routine that I work out. But if that falls on a Sunday, I make sure that no matter what, even if I can't make it to church, like you guys, like my point is, I always have to prioritize my time with the Lord. Like I never want working out, no matter a passion or like no matter my goals. Like I never want that to come before God, because God gave me that desire and that passion, the opportunity in the first place, aside from everything. But like God deserves my time. And like I'm better when I'm spending time with him. I'm better when I'm going to church and being filled up so that I can go into my world for the rest of the week. It's like God calls us to rest on Sundays. And so that's a whole nother subject. But really just like finding a balance and prioritizing and asking yourself, okay, like, is what I'm doing, this choice, whether it's good, does this glorify God? The way that I'm eating, the way that I'm working out, the amount of time that I spend investing into this, And I don't know your walk. I don't know your season. I don't know what you do. Maybe you're fully into personal training. That is your career or whatever. And so of course you have to like look the part, but just, all this come to say, you guys, that these decisions and these choices that we make, like this is between us and God. And I just want to shed light on maybe different perspectives for you. So, not even only how I looked, that was my priority, but I learned like over the years was how I performed. And like I said, I know that God introduced me to CrossFit for his glory. I believe like the connections I made, my perspective on training, all these things. And I honestly like discover my deepest thoughts that I met on my workouts, even for this podcast. I think it's probably the endorphins that are going. And so I'm just like super connected with Jesus. So I love that. And I think that's almost the way I'm like, hey, God, like, yes, we can see like working out as a way to relieve anxiety or something. But for me, it's like, hey, this is a way for me to like quiet my mind and I can just hear him clearly. Like I guess that's my perspective in some ways. But yeah, it's like that physical challenge for me also to decide, like, show me, hey, what are you really made of, Danielle? Like, if you can accomplish this physically, like, what else can you accomplish, like, spiritually? What else can you accomplish in your business? What else can you accomplish, like, mentally? That's my perspective for it, when I'm in it. And that's almost a competitive side of me, like challenging myself. The good side that really pushes me to just never be average, right? But when I push it too far, there's this comparison that slips in and I find myself feeling lesser. I'm not up to par with other athletes. There are gyms that I've been a part of where there was such a competitive atmosphere that an event that should have been fun and should have been like, hey, what are you made of? Like, what can you do? I literally was in the corner, like holding back tears because I'm like, you're not good enough, Danielle. Like, what are you doing? When I should have been so proud, you know what I'm saying? So like, there's that fine line where I'm like, hey, maybe God led me to do this, but the enemy's like, I'm going to take that competitive side of you that normally makes you good. It normally challenges you yourself to be better and push you out of your comfort zone and, avoid mediocrity. And I'm actually going to use it for wrong. I'm actually going to try to make you feel lesser, make you feel like you're not good enough. When God's intention was, hey, I'm challenging you because you don't need to stay in this area for this time of your life and it's time to move on. It's time to outgrow it. Do you see what I'm saying? Like there's a difference. There's such there's like a fine line where the things that we have like good habits and can make us better, can make us godlier, and just make us better from the inside out. The enemy can still use to destroy us and take away our confidence and make us feel like we're inadequate, right? And so it's so important, you guys, that being aware of that, having that understanding. And I just realized like God has to come first. And when he does, everything else makes sense, you guys. Everything in your life, that verse that it's the first commandment, even in your relationship. Even when I think about like my husband, I'm like, okay, I'm going to love them so fully. Like my mom's always like, your husband comes first, but I know like priority in life, but God has to come first. And if God doesn't come first, then I can't love my husband fully to the way that I need to be, right? Like there's all these aspects of our life, like God has to be number one, because when he does, everything else falls into place. We have understanding, we have discernment, we have a love, we have a patience, we have just, our spirit is in line with God. And so like we can do life in every other area. And so he has to come first, love him first. And we have to be cautious, being caught up in idolizing even the good things, even the fitnessing, even the challenges, even the healthy choices. Because like I said, when he doesn't come first, when we're not actively seeking him first, life is out of whack. And I know that to be so true because the world, like I said, is not supposed to fulfill us. Only God can fulfill us. And so one of the first verses that ever came to my mind when I thought about this podcast was it's in 1 Timothy 4. It says, to train yourself for godliness. For while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every single way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. So, like I said, I'm telling you guys, like I was like in tears the other day because there are like 3 events that I had coming up that I really wanted to train. And I'm like, hey, God, you made me for this. And for some reason, I just can't make those couple events. And now we know that they're just limited these days. And so, but while like I feel like that's such a huge part of me that makes me me, I also know that God, that's not all of who I am. And like, while, I want to be an athlete and I want to train hard and I want to be great and I want to take care of myself. And I love pouring in other people and sharing with them about health and wellness. Like that's such a huge priority to me. He says like, hey, you need to train yourself for godliness because that has value in every single way in your life. And it holds a promise for right now and for our eternity, And so he's not saying that he's like, bodily training is good. Like there is value in it. It's important. He created that with importance, but he's also saying godliness and seeking the Lord and really being aligned with God spiritually and what he's called us to do, that has to be number one. And I hope that I stress that enough. I hope that I stress that in a healthy way for you to see when you're seeking God, when you're being filled by the Lord, like everything else just like falls into place. And so just finally, like that performance, like I was talking about, that doesn't define you. How you look doesn't define you. And if you are seeking information about seeking love and acceptance from the world and enough from God, then check out my last episode. That really, I feel like goes hand in hand with this. So as I said it before, you guys, this is between you and God. Like your health journey is between you and the Lord. And he knows your heart. He knows your thoughts. He knows your intentions. He knows your struggles. And I'm not saying like I'm perfect at all of these. I struggle with most of these. Like every day I'm working on them. And that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I'm like, hey, okay, this is such a huge, deal to me, and where I feel like we really need to find balance in, especially to function normally, to be connected to God, to take care of ourselves. Like I need to share this with the world. And so I hope that I expose that in the right way. And like I said, I love you guys all for where you're at. I hope that you heard my heart through this. And maybe that's just the first step for you, is the awareness. And that was what it was for me. Like I wasn't even comprehending that I had an unhealthy obsession with fitness and what I ate. And so I want to remind you, kind of maybe think about a couple of these things. So where do my priorities lie? Like, is my first thought when I wake up to eat or work out, or is it Jesus? How do I feel after I work out? Who I work out with? Are they challenging me in a healthy way, or do I feel discouraged? What are the effects of the certain foods that I eat? How is it affecting my mental health? Even if I love what I do, am I still glorifying God? And am I seeking to relieve these feelings of anxiety or loneliness with fitness or food? So remember, guys, if you're seeking answers, just ask God. Like God knows your heart. He knows everything about you. And so just have a conversation with him. There's no like specific way that you need to pray. Just talk to him. And ask him in confidence for the wisdom, for the direction. Like let him lead you, like give him the opportunity to lead you. And of course, you guys, if you ever need help, you can always reach out to me. This is a complete judgment-free zone. Like I said, I was so embarrassed for so long. I was like, I can't act like I'm a mess internally. Like who would, like, what would people think if they knew that I was so obsessed over like what I ate or what I felt like, or you know what I'm saying? And so I would never want somebody to feel that way, because I don't want you to deal with that on your own. So I think I know that I go through the things that I battle with personally, because I'm here to connect with you guys, because I'm here to connect with you about your relationships, about your business, about your body, and about the way that you love yourself. And so I would love nothing more to connect with you and help you to gain that control of your body, your mind, and your spirit. And so a couple prayer points real quick, you guys. I love this. I think I want to start doing this at the end of the episodes, kind of like these little affirmation prayer points. So some things you can tell yourself, pray about. God, I choose to honor you with my body. Help me to seek ways to create healthy habits that honor you. Remind me to seek you in confidence for relief when I feel weak. You give me a spirit of self-control. Give me discernment when anything starts to come before you. Remind me of your unconditional love and acceptance for me just as I am. And give me opportunities to glorify you in my training. So you guys, I would love to hear from you, hear your feedback, hear maybe what you're struggling with. I'm here for you. I'm so excited. Like I said, this is such a near and dear topic to my heart, and something I just felt like I dealt with so much by myself. So I would love to connect with you. Please message me at Danny Cakes, my Instagram, DANNNI Cakes, or at immeasurably.more.podcast. And I would love to just pray with you and hear you out. Or if you just need to just have someone to talk to, I would love to be the person for you. And of course, you guys, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. This podcast reaches more people when you do that. And let's help to just keep encouraging everyone that we know that's near and dear to us, that God has immeasurably more in store for them. And I hope that they feel that so fully through this podcast. So next episode, you guys, I'm so excited to introduce you to my fellow podcaster and friend, Lana Wagon. She loves Jesus and she hates her comfort zone too. And so if you guys enjoy this podcast, you will love her. And so I can't wait to chat it up with her. And I will leave you with this. 1 Corinthians 10:13. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God.